Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Road to Nowhere. I yawned and rubbed the sleep away from my eyes. Looking around, the flickering lights of the train windows I had gotten so used to were gone, and all I could see were the dim white lights that lined the aisle of the train car. I glanced around at all the empty seats, confused. Why was I here? Why was the train empty? And why wasn't it moving? Confusion overtook me, followed by panic. I shot to my feet and strode to the end of the train car, trying the door at the very end, but it wouldn't budge. I quickened my steps to the other side, my shoes clanking on the metal floor, and tried the sliding door. This one opened like a dream. Excitedly, I stepped out of the train car onto the solid ground I knew would be there, and promptly fell. There was no ground. There was no sky. There was just nothingness. My heart dropped into my stomach as I lurched downward, and the only thing that saved me from plummeting into that nothingness was the open backpack on my back, caught on the armrest of one of the chairs still inside. My arms, having felt like they were wrenched from my shoulders, hung there loosely as the straps of my backpack held on to me for dear life. My breath caught in my throat, and my mind raced as I stared out at the blackness before me. How do I get up? I tried to turn to grab the floor of the train car, but a loud tearing of fabric caused me to pause, and my heart thundered in my ears. I waited, my arms refusing to move out of fear. But in one fell swoop, I launched my hands up behind me and hoisted myself back onto the floor of the train car, just as my backpack completely tore open. Panting heavily, back in the safety of the train car, I ripped my backpack off my shoulders and inspected the damage. The top was completely torn, but I didn't care. That stupid backpack saved my life. I threw it back on and stood up, staring out at the blackness before me, holding on to the armrest of a chair, just for insurance. There was literally nothing. No one. The silence was so suffocating, I almost wished to hear my heart pounding in my ears again. "Hello?" I called as loud as I could into the void, but there wasn't even an echo, just silence. Suddenly, as if compelled by some outside force, the train car lurched forward. I nearly tumbled into the void again, the only thing that saved me being that armrest I was holding. What was that? Who's doing that? I called, but once again, no answer. The train car chugged along slowly, almost at a snail's pace, but I figured that was better than nothing. I closed the sliding door, sick of my inability to stay firmly in the train, and walked carefully to a seat, plopping down into it. What was I doing before I got on the train? I didn't remember. Who was I? I didn't remember. It felt like I'd been created from air and dropped onto this God-forsaken train, surrounded by this God-forsaken nothing. I took the poor, shredded backpack off my shoulders again and searched through it this time, but all I found were some loose-leaf blank sheets of notebook paper. A student, maybe? If I was stupidly disorganized. I desperately tried to search my brain for any clues related to school. Maybe the name of a school I went to, the names of past teachers, the faces of fellow students and friends. I came up with nothing. No matter how much I tried to scour my memories, one unchangeable fact remained. I was stuck on a train car in the middle of the void, heading to nowhere. All I could do was wait. So that's what I did. I waited, and I waited, and waited. I kept myself occupied with my thoughts as I stared out the window, gazing into the darkness. I don't know how much time passed. I had nothing to gauge my bearings on. No watch, no ticking clock, nothing. The dim lights from the train ceiling flickered for a moment, and then went out with a quiet click. And at the same time, the train came to an abrupt halt. I looked away from the window and shot to my feet, wrenched away from my thoughts, and pressed myself against the train wall. I could barely see anything. The dim lights were the only light source in this never-ending blackness. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice broke in my nervousness. There was a small beep, like something about to be announced over an intercom. And all of a sudden, a digital message began scrolling across the top of the train wall in bright red digital letters. Suddenly, as if compelled by some outside force, the train car lurched forward. The train started moving again, abruptly, the force almost yanking me off my feet. And I steadied myself before looking back at the digital red letters. Who's doing this? Who is it? My frustration and stress exploded into my voice, and I stomped angrily away from the wall to stand in the center of the slow-moving train car, bathed by the weak red light of the letters. The digital message continued scrolling, and the letters would reveal a message that would make me rush towards the seats. The train started moving again abruptly, the force almost yanking me off my feet. I didn't catch the rest, desperate to get to a seat. The train did, in fact, start moving forward again. And it was only by the grace of God that I ended up grabbing the armrest of a seat to avoid flying to the floor. Angrily, I stormed to the end of the train and yanked open the sliding door, screaming into the void. "Are you messing with me? What are you trying to do? Why am I here?" I glanced back at the red letters on a whim and saw the following message. The silence was so suffocating, I almost wished to hear my heart pounding in my ears again. Nothing. Absolute silence. And the last thing I saw before tumbling out of the train and into the void were the small red letters forming the words, "There was no ground. There was no sky. Good luck. Harmful intentions." History shows that technological advancement brought about the end of civilization, fragmented into divisions that hastened its collapse. The problem was that the majority thoughtlessly embraced regression, while the intelligent proclaimed that freedom had ended long ago. Freedom ended with an algorithm that read intent, marketed as a savior, but fundamentally incapable of understanding logic. To avoid chaos and preserve harmony, the apology law was introduced. If the algorithm identified someone with intentions deemed harmful, the accused was legally obligated to apologize to the victim. If the accused apologized and admitted guilt, acknowledging that they had harmful thoughts, they remained in the registry, but were not punished. However, if accused 3 times, or if they refused to apologize, they were declared a danger to society and exiled to the zone of silence, a place where no communication with society was possible. On June 23rd, at 1:10 a.m., 2 lifeless men in bland gray suits appeared at my door. "You are accused of harmful intent," they said, offering no further explanation. I had no choice but to go with them. The 2 gray men escorted me to a claustrophobic cell with concrete walls, no windows, and a single chair in the center. They told me they'd come for me at 6 in the morning to take me to trial. It was already 3 a.m. All I had was panic and the chair. In those few hours, I tried to recall all the harmful intents I might have harbored in my life. The problem was that I was one of those quiet, introverted types. A person everyone says wouldn't hurt a fly. Nothing came to mind. I recalled no one provoking harmful intent. I was used to being a doormat. Tired of fighting back, I spent my days writing. My wife had left with her colleague, and I preferred the solitude to her insults, calling me useless. Silence, at least, offered peace. Society, fractured by the constant surveillance of the algorithm, had left me without friends. That was the problem. I had lost the will to live in such a society, along with any desire or intention. Smoking, drinking coffee, and writing were habits, not intentions. Detention bewildered me. I didn't even live with intent. I suppose it was precisely 6 o'clock in the morning when the 2 gray men returned for me. They didn't strike me as the type to joke about seconds. They led me through narrow, gray painted corridors with gray doors on either side, until we arrived at an empty courtroom where they gestured for me to sit. The courtroom reeked of bleach, as though executions had occurred. Suddenly, it dawned on me. What if the algorithm, incapable of interpreting context and logic in thoughts and feelings, had interpreted one of my stories as harmful intent? It was true that I often vented my frustrations by punishing characters in my stories. The algorithm must have misinterpreted every artist. That explains the disappearance of art. At that moment, a prosecutor burst into the courtroom as swiftly as a swallow's tail. But there was no defense attorney. That profession no longer existed. The prosecutor was a tall, skinny man, one of those people you'd say had been consumed by malice from the inside out. A worm, a tall worm with feet. He wiggled constantly, twisting as if he itched all over or urgently needed the restroom. As the worm ignored me, I let my gaze wander across the courtroom. The gray walls pulsed, rearranging with each blink. Above the judge's bench, AI slogans flickered erratically. Freedom is the absence of choice. Apologize to survive. Their chaos reflected my growing despair. It became clear that I no longer existed, even as an artist. AI wrote instead of me. The worm wiggled, pointing to the door. A figure entered, the judge of intent, and took his seat at the bench. His mismatched face and darting eyes gave him a grotesque, puppet-like appearance. When he spoke, his voice didn't match his mouth. His lips, twisted in perpetual disgust and drooping to his neck, bore no relation to the words emerging as if dubbed. For a while, the judge leafed through documents in complete silence. I assumed they were about me, though I couldn't imagine what they might contain. I didn't dare to speak or ask. When he finished, he looked at the worm, who leaped to his feet as if stung, and began speaking in such a formal tone that I struggled to follow. Your Honor, the accused was caught red-handed in the act of harboring harmful thoughts, and the prosecution will easily prove this. Only then did he take a breath. You are accused of thought crimes, the judge said. Which thoughts? I asked, my voice cracking. He paused, tilting his head like a machine processing input. Your thoughts, all of them. But defensiveness confirms intent, he interrupted. My voice collapsed in my throat. I didn't know what they wanted me to confess, and perhaps neither did they. How do you plead? The judge asked, his voice rasping, as though he'd been smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day since birth. Plead, Your Honor. I mimicked how the worm addressed him. Plead to what? The accused refuses to admit guilt and apologize to the victim, thereby obstructing the legal remedy. Legal remedy? I thought. Am I sick? Sick with what? Does the prosecution have witnesses? The judge rasped again, directing his gaze at the worm. The worm grinned, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. We call the accused's teacher as the first witness. My teacher, I thought. Back when I went to school, there was no algorithm. If anyone acted harmfully, it was that tyrant of a teacher. The teacher, nicknamed Psycho, entered, older but unchanged. He had been infamous for flailing and throwing things in class, only to quickly smile as if nothing had happened. Hence the nickname. Now, Psycho was frail and nearly blind, bumping into the witness stand before taking his seat. When given the word, he began in a saccharine voice. "Your Honor, I did everything in my power to properly shape this boy. Perhaps I even contributed to his harmful nature, but my hands were tied. As a teacher, I wasn't allowed to discipline him more severely, and by nature, I am a gentle soul." While Psycho spoke sweetly, I pictured him hurling chairs. "He had harmful intent," Psycho said. "When boys beat him, I saw retaliation in his eyes." Retaliation? I feared. I also recall a literature class where the students were asked to write essays about their father's occupations. When I called on him, having no father, he hadn't completed the assignment. Naturally, I gave him a failing grade. His tear-filled eyes turned red as blood. I swear he wanted to burn the school down. Burn the school down? I just wanted to cry. As I've aged, some memories have faded, but I can swear to this. One day, when other children pointed and laughed at him because his mother still brought him to school and waited for him after class, he wet himself. I'm certain he imagined a gun at that moment. They weren't pointing at me, I thought. They were throwing rocks at me while I cowered in the corner, bloody and bruised. Your Honor. Psycho leaned forward, his eyes wide with sincerity. The accused often sat in my class and stared out the window. I saw the intent in his eyes, an intent to escape, to defy the order of the classroom. The judge nodded gravely, pronouncing, "Escapism leads to anarchy. He has been a menace to society from birth. There is no doubt that he is guilty." The judge allowed Psycho to leave the courtroom. As he shuffled out, painfully slow, or as fast as he could manage, I wondered, how is it possible that even after these absurd and grotesque accusations made up by a tyrant, I feel harmful intent toward him? The judge turned to me again, rasping, "Do you admit guilt and apologize to the victim?" "Guilt for what?" I asked, confused. Am I actually on trial for one of the ridiculous situations described by a madman? "No," the judge replied coldly. "The prosecutor has brought witnesses to testify about your character, which is evidently prone to harmful intent. You are on trial for an intent only you can admit, and you must apologize to an anonymous victim. Otherwise, you will be exiled to the zone of silence." "Then, no," I truly don't know what intent you're referring to. Wouldn't it be simpler to tell me the accusation so I can respond to a real charge? You clearly don't understand the system. Prosecutor, call your next witness. The worm wiggled with delight, announcing, I call the accused's wife to the stand. She entered, adorned with gaudy jewelry, her hair styled into an overdone perm that made her head look enormous. Her makeup-caked blouse emphasized her unattractiveness. A harpy, I thought. We had vowed to stand by each other in good times and bad. Yet here she was, standing as one of the pillars of doom, ready to crush me. I sat there, devastated, staring at the table, holding my head. I didn't have the strength to look at her, perhaps the most important person in my life, betraying me to prove her loyalty to the system for her own survival, unconsciously blending the dialects from my southern birthplace and her western home. She made a strong effort to speak in the central dialect. It was quite funny, but my reaction barely reached the corners of my lips. The main heroine of a Turkish soap opera couldn't have been more unconvincing and exaggerated. Your Honor, she said tearfully, though no tears appeared. This man stole my youth. The algorithm should have caught him sooner. She clutched a tissue she didn't use. He once asked if I was happy. Such doubt is harmful to harmony. I had once loved her confidence until I saw her superficiality for what it was. She added a sniff. I love this man, but I love the truth more. I'll tell you everything. The truth that the perm wasn't the best idea, I thought bitterly. I married him out of love, but he hid his harmful intent until the wedding. Soon after, he began calling me degrading names like useless and a rag. I looked up in shock. Why is she blaming me for her words? I feared his intent to harm me or end any chance of having a child. She threw herself across the bench dramatically, sobbing loudly, but still without a single tear. This deeply hurt me. After years of silence, I reacted with a yell. What are you saying? How dare you? I begged you for a child all these years, but you said you didn't want some brat to ruin your beauty. The judge interrupted me with a loud thump of his gavel, stating that he wouldn't allow me to insult the poor woman on the stand. I sat down, stunned, clutching my head. Am I crazy? Maybe they're all telling the truth, but my perception is warped. But if this is true, then I'm not me. I don't know who I am anymore. As my thoughts struggled to regain some clarity, the actress on the stand continued her performance. Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to add the most harmful intent of the accused. The accused? I thought. So now she's stripping away my very name, my status, my identity. I know I'm not perfect, But that's only because I respect the algorithm. The accused loved silence, and I preferred to speak my intentions out loud rather than live in fear of how they might be interpreted. Sometimes I wonder if I lost him in all that noise, or if I simply didn't understand him. She paused dramatically. But the algorithm is far more important to me, even more than my appearance. Maybe that's why he told me he wanted to leave me for his colleague. But I refused. And since the law doesn't allow divorce unless both parties agree, she paused for a long moment. He intended to kill me. She collapsed, fake sobbing and writhing in exaggerated anguish. A weak range of actions for such an actress. While the worm escorted the exhausted woman out of the courtroom, I remained frozen. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the judge asking me for the third time if I admitted guilt and offered an apology to the victim. I responded from some other place. The words slowly came out of me, almost mechanically. If we were caricaturing the roles, this woman, my wife, would be the victim. Am I accused of killing her? I asked. Well, yes, I must have killed her. There's no other explanation. Is this the guilt I must admit and apologize to this victim of genocide? Don't make me repeat myself. The judge was now even angrier. I told you that the witnesses don't know the reason for your trial. Only you know your intent. Will you admit it? But what worse intent could I have than murder? For murder, you'd be punished without trial. But your disgusting, repulsive, vile intent could shake society to its core and completely destabilize harmony. I sat down, mouth agape. Prosecutor, introduce the final witness, after which I will deliver the verdict. Completely beside myself, lost in my identity, and thus lost from the courtroom, I didn't notice that my mother had burst through the door and jumped onto me over the desk. She clung to me, caressing me roughly, as if slapping me, and hanging from the desk, trying to reach me with kisses. You're mine! I won't let anyone have you! As the worm gently pulled her off me and led her to the witness stand, I remained motionless. I just turned my head toward the window and stayed catatonic. Meanwhile, she wailed, "Let me take him home. I won't have anyone to sniff my flesh to see if it's gone bad, to call to come for me every time I have a diarrhea attack." He didn't mean it. All the teachers loved him. His wife adores him. He's a model citizen. I never let him out of my hands. He's my baby, my lover. He's my trophy, proof of my perfection. If you condemn him, you condemn me too. Come to mother, son. Let me nurse you once again. I stared through the window, a lifeless person inside me, into the lifeless city. In the background of the so-called harmony, this society operates like a perfectly tuned machine. Silence on the streets, people moving in neat lines with minimal interaction, and a complete loss of the spontaneity of human connection. While they forcefully dragged some madwoman out of the courtroom, I noticed the passers-by didn't even raise their eyes, as if everyone had already been condemned to silence. Absently, I heard the judge asking me for the last time if I admitted guilt and offered an apology. Out of my body, as if hypnotized, I whispered, "What guilt? For what? Who?" I've always been more afraid of hurting someone else than myself. The worm, now almost gleeful, turned to the judge, who looked at me with wide eyes. "So, you admit?" "What am I admitting?" I asked, my mind still reeling. "You admit your harmful intent?" I didn't understand. The judge nodded to the worm, who whispered to me, "You just admitted your harmful intent." What did I say? That I would rather hurt myself than hurt others? "Yes," the worm rejoiced, and then it hit me. The previous night, I had thought about how I never quite fit in, how I had no life or expectations, and that the best thing would have been to end my life long ago. So that's it? I'm being accused because suicide seemed like the only way out. The judge regained his official tone. "Accused, stand up. It is my duty to read the law to you again. The court offers leniency. If you admit guilt and apologize, the punishment will be light, but your name will remain in the register of those with bad intent. If you are accused 3 times or refuse to admit guilt and apologize to the victim, you will be declared a danger to society and exiled to the zone of silence, a place where no communication with society is possible." What will it be? Declare yourself, apologize to the victim, or be declared a danger to society. I pose no harm to society, only to myself. So I must be the victim. Yes, I am the victim. All these years, I've been helpless, not knowing how to fight, how to live, how to be human. That's why I intended to take my life. I finally spoke. "Your Honor, I admit I had a harmful thought," I said, "but not guilt. I will not apologize because it's not my guilt, and it's not for me to apologize." The judge's tired eyes met mine. He raised the gavel, declaring, "Guilty." As I was led to the zone of silence, I passed a wall with faint writing on it, barely legible, written by a shaking hand. "Silence is not the end." I couldn't help feeling I wasn't alone. Silence embraced me. In it, I found myself. The zone was truly silent, but not deafening, peaceful. Finally, I could hear my heart, my breath, my thoughts. Here, in a world without judgment, I was no longer a son, nor a husband, nor part of society. I was simply me. This wasn't the end, but the beginning. Silence. Let me exist. Silence is freedom. The psychiatrist. I closed my eyes, ignoring the loud courtroom around me. Smacking of a woman in the back's gum chewing, fast typing of computer, closing and opening of doors in the back of the already full room. Clicking of photos being taken, yelling of lawyers arguing, banging of Judge Lewis's gavel hitting the hollow wooden desk. How did I get there? How did one misstep cause me to be the one standing there awaiting death or life imprisonment? No matter what I chose, it was the end for me. So couldn't I have given up instead of going down screaming? No, I couldn't have, because that wasn't me. I heard the judge's raspy voice echo across the small courtroom. "Silence," he hollered. The whole room followed his instructions and went dead silent. "Miss Davis, I will ask once more," the judge sighed in a strained but steady voice. "How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty?" His voice faded slowly, like he was on edge. I paused, still holding my eyes securely shut. His strained, groggy voice gave me the feeling he was tired, angry, annoyed, and possibly sad. The way his jaw moved very gently and seemed clenched, even when he spoke, was a curious realization. Though when he did speak, normally, his voice was slow and dull, which was pretty normal for someone his age. But still, I knew something was wrong. He had a small wedding band on his right hand that was slightly rusted around the edges, married for 30 years at least. He had bruises covered by a tattoo on the back of his same hand, which I noticed immediately after. It was new, practically 3 days old. Gone, but never forgotten. It read next to a small signature. I thought back more to the tattoo. JLJ, the signature read. Was it short for John Lewis Jr., the judge's son? The judge was grieving, not tired. He seemed so gloomy. I leaned my back against my chair, only to feel a soft vibration. So I listened. A uniformed officer behind me was tapping her foot on the floor quickly. Not normally, though. It was like she had somewhere to be. Nevertheless, it wasn't enough information to know for sure. Officer Howard had walked me in there, so I must have seen more. I remembered the way she walked, with a small limp on her left side. And when I asked her what courtroom we were going to, she responded angrily, like she was frustrated with a simple question. During the entire opening remarks, I kept hearing her heartbeat in the silence, and it was beating fast. But why was that? Was she nervous? Perhaps anxiety? No, that wouldn't explain the limp. That's it, I thought. Pain meds. She was taking them for her knee, but they were causing an addiction. She needed to see a doctor to get more. and that is why she was checking her watch so often. I took a deep breath to try and refocus on the judge's question, but I couldn't. I took a big whiff of my lawyer, Maxwell Hartley's cologne. It was strong, to say it best, but why was that? Other days, he'd come in with no smell, so why was today different? I pictured his frame leaning against the door in the hallway during our recess. He was a tall guy, 6'4", and his energy followed that. Every day, he came into work with a kind smile and a good morning for everyone. But he hadn't in a few weeks. He wasn't bad looking either, with his short, dark brown hair and even darker brown eyes. But alas, he wore a wedding ring when we first met. That was until a month ago when I noticed it off, and he never mentioned anything. I remembered back to the morning when he left abruptly at 10 o'clock on the dot and returned at exactly 10:15. Later, at around 1 o'clock, he did the same and came back at 1:15 again. Coincidence? No, nothing in our world is. So, what could he be doing that took 10 minutes? Immediately, a conversation I had with my therapist friend came up where she mentioned 15 minutes on the phone talking about common interests is an exercise for troubled couples. This means that Hartley was having marital problems. The judge coughed, and I jumped. I regained focus and slowly opened my sore eyes to adjust to the light. Shouldn't have I just ended this? Stopped at all the suffering I caused everyone, and just admitted to it. They all have places to be. So why couldn't I just say, yeah, I did it? 4 stupidly simple words I couldn't get out of my mouth. Why didn't I think I did anything? I did. I killed so many people. I can admit it now. But what was wrong with me then? I'm a psychiatrist. I should be able to tell what is wrong with people with the slightest movement. But in this case, I can't, and I don't know why. The entire trial, I had no feeling in me. It's like I was turning into someone else. I felt no remorse for killing 17 people. And yeah, sure it was out of my hands. But I still was caught red-handed prescribing medication people never even needed just to make a profit. I just don't understand it all. I have studied the brains, body languages, and emotions of thousands of people for most of my life. Yet somehow, I can't find out why or what happened to me. I was a good person before all of this. I had friends, an amazing career, a life, and a family. So how could one bad decision make me want to drive that all away? The answer, you may be wondering, I will never be able to give. I shot out of my chair fiercely. Not guilty, Your Honor. The whole courtroom gasped out loud. I plead not guilty, seeking fair lady. No matter how much she fussed with her blonde locks, Lady Charity Farnsworth cast a blue, deviled countenance before her boudoir mirror, so could not achieve a desirable outcome. She finally relinquished the brush, tossing it to the makeup-strewn vanity as she thought to herself, "Whatever am I to do? My father has forbidden me to ever entertain my beau, Sir Riley, in any genteel ton company henceforth. He doesn't understand the depths of our love for one another. What is the point of attending yet another tea or ball in pretense of making a match, when in my heart of hearts the perfect match already exists? There is none other I would ever want to be yoked to. Why can't Father forgive our innocent indiscretions in the garden and offer Sir Fenwick another opportunity to win his graces? So what if he saw us kissing? Giving up, she flung her arms out wide, then buried her face in her hands as she sobbed. Presently, a cautious knock sounded at the door. "Oh, Charity, dear," came the voice of her father. "Let me in to see how you look. You'll be meeting some exciting, eligible bachelors tonight. You must be ready. It is time to be going." "Oh, one moment, please. Be right there." She slipped a silky robe over her shift and opened the door. "Charity, where is your maid? You are not near ready to go, and your face is a disgrace. Whatever is wrong with you?" She couldn't help herself. She encircled his neck with her forearms and cried on the shoulder of his wool spencer, smearing it with rouge. "Please, Father, I have no desire to meet any other man. I only yearn for my true love." "Do you mean that insufferable rogue, Fenwick? He treated you like an adventuress. No respect for you or myself. I will not be bamboozled by the likes of him. You deserve a man of honor, the kind that will be at the gala tonight. Now get into your gown. As long as you are under my roof, you'll abide by my rules. I'll pick out a suitable mate for you, one that will be an advantageous coupling. End of discussion." He disentangled himself from her and slammed the door shut on his way out. 1 second later, the door opened again as he stuck his head in. "Don't bother getting dressed now. We would be late. I'll simply bring home some lucky fellow with me. You'll meet him when I get back, and we will have a ceremony this weekend to make you his wife. That'll put an end to your nonsense." Once he left, Charity wailed louder than ever. "No, no, no. He can't do this to me." She collapsed on the bed in tears. Meanwhile, out in the garden, Sir Riley crouched behind a leafy rhododendron, watching for the carriage to leave. It surprised him to see Lord Farnsworth was alone. That meant chances were good that Charity would be alone inside as well. He had ridden along with his partner, Sir Carlton Winslow, when he came to escort Dowager Countess Diana Honeyfield Charity's aunt, out to dinner. His hope had been to follow Charity and her father to whatever event they had planned for the evening and try to win an audience with the Lord, to apologize for his behavior at their last meeting. This turn of events was even better. Dare he approach his fair maiden to pick up where they left off? He had gained great strides in having his way with the lass before her father had discovered their secret rendezvous in the dark garden and forbade them to see each other ever again. It was a risky plan, but with aplomb, perhaps fortune would smile on them, and her father could never deny them, given the right circumstance. His heart was pounding. If he could just get inside and convince the fair maiden to let him come inside also. His hands sweated as he hoisted himself up the giant oak that spread branches out toward what he was sure was her dressing room window. Twigs snapped and leaves rustled. Hopefully, no servants were close enough to hear his clumsy ascent. When in position, he could peer through the gauzy curtains and see her sprawled on the bed, wearing little other than a flimsy robe. His excitement heightened. He threw twigs to ping on the glass and cautiously called out her name. What? What was that noise? I miss Riley so much. It is as if I can hear him calling to me. She stretched up from the mattress, allowing the robe to fall away, exposing more tender flesh. Then she realized where the noise was coming from and ran to the window. She couldn't get it opened fast enough when she saw her love clinging to the branches. Soon he was within her grasp, and they clung to each other. Mouths searched and found one another. Fingers fumbled at clothing till it fell away. Palms grabbed and caressed and repeated and explored uncharted territory. He picked up her trembling body and carried it to the bed, gently placing it as he wordlessly asked permission to envelope her. She willingly granted access and likewise enveloped all of him. They brought each other to tottering heights, crashing deliciously down, and climbed again and again, becoming one with each other. Let no man put asunder, losing all sense of time and space. They belonged to each other. They were in total bliss until Charity, it is your father. I have someone you need to meet. He will soon be your husband. I am giving him your hand in marriage. Come out at once. Charity wilted in Riley's arms. You mustn't be caught in here. He'll kill you. Then he'll kill me, slowly. I know the kind of man he would choose for me. Nothing like you. Climb out, please, she whispered. I'll not give you to another man. I'll face those barking irons if I must, but you belong fully to me now. We've been caught red-handed, but we've done nothing wrong. No apologies anymore. I'll make you an honest woman. We'll visit the Amen curler tomorrow. We love each other. Your father has to see that now. No swell will have you after tonight. I'm not sorry." He kissed her quickly and slid out the window just as her father opened the door on her nakedness beneath the sheets. 1600, Vol.18, 2024. Subterfuge. Suitors precariously climbing trees and pressing their suit. Ripped bodices. Hot kisses. Near discovery. I nearly swooned. What more could possibly befall our hero and heroine? Be still, my heart, and wait impatiently for the next installment of All's Fair. 1640, Vol.28, 2024. So glad you approve. Thought about changing ending to where she climbs out with him and they disappear too? Haven't entered it, so think it is okay to change. Happy Thanksgiving. Reply. Edit. Delete. Upvote. Downvote. 1 point. Trudy Jass. 1656. Vol.28, 2024. Happy Thanksgiving to you. You could have her slip out before she meets what's his name, or in the day or two before the wedding. Auntie could have a little tea party for her, and off the Jersey or Gretna Green they go. Reply. Report. Upvote. Downvote. 1 point. Mary Bendixson, 2055. Vol.28, 2024. Right on. Reply. Edit. Delete. 36. Vol.28, 2024. Your story has a lot going for it. It's dramatic, emotional, and packed with tension, all of which make for an engaging Regency romance. Charity's despair and her father's overbearing nature are written in a way that makes the stakes feel real. It's clear how much is on the line for her, and that emotional pull keeps the reader invested. I love how you've woven in Regency-era details like Spencer, Ton, and Amen Curler. Those touches make the world feel authentic as without being overwhelming. Charity and Riley's relationship feels passio. Reply. Report. 1644. Vol.28, 2024. So appreciative of your comments. Was considering changing the ending to her climbing out with him to the unknown. What do you think? Happy Thanksgiving. Reply. Edit. Delete. Upvote. Downvote. 1 point. Rebecca Lewis, 1808. Vol.29, 2024. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. I think having Charity climb out with Riley could be a powerful ending. It adds an extra layer of defiance and agency to her character. It would show she's willing to take control of her own fate instead of being trapped by her father's demands. Plus, it leaves the story on a romantic and adventurous note, with the two of them facing an uncertain future together. That kind of ending would feel satisfying and true to the passion you've established between them. If you decide to go that route, you might want reply, report, thanks again. I wrote another too cute episode last night that sort of fits one of this week's prompts. After reading the new prompts, I think I will pull the fair story and match it with a new prompt. Even though it has several likes, which I will lose, I didn't enter it into contest, so it should be okay to do. Have more family events today, but hope to get this done. Reply, edit, delete, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Leslie Mamala, 1105, Nov 28, 2024. Well done. I am ready to hear what happens next. Reply, report, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Mary Bendixson, 1653, Nov 28, 2024. Glad you liked it, and thanks for the follow. Have you read the previous episodes, all with fair in them, that lead up to this fiasco? We'll get back to your work after today. Happy Thanksgiving. Reply, edit, delete, 2020, Nov 28, 2024. Not yet, but I will. Happy Thanksgiving. Reply, report, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Thomas Wetzel, 0749, Nov 28, 2024. Your writing is so sophisticated, I can barely understand half of it. I just know it's awesome. You are so good. I'm gonna go watch every episode of Downton Abbey, and then come back to reread this and see if I can actually appreciate it like an intelligent adult. Happy Turkey Day. Reply, report, 1649, Novi 28, 2024. Gobble, gobble to you too. I don't know about sophisticated. I am only winging it on this ton stream, but glad you like it. Reply, edit, delete, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Lady Coretta, Stevenberg, 0502, Nov 28, 2024. Always a good read. Reply, report, Joe 533, Nov 28, 2024. Thank you. Reply, edit, delete, upvote, downvote, 1 point. Alexis Araneta, 1748, Nov 27, 2024. An adorable continuation of your series. Lovely work. Reply, report, 1931, Novi 27, 2024. Thank you. Do you think of this as the finale, or does it go on? Reply, edit, delete, fear, switch. My eyes were wide open now, pupils dilated, and blood freezing in my veins. I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest to get away from it all, since I couldn't. It was as if I had encountered Medusa and was turned to stone. I guess, if you think about it, the last feeling you're left with forever, when you realize your entire life will amount to nothing but a petrified, cold figure, is exactly this. Fear, pure fear, the kind that makes you realize there is no escape, no chance to do anything to help yourself. These kinds of things never crossed my mind, 'cause I avoid situations that make me uncomfortable, anxious, and especially afraid. I'm not an adventurous person, someone who would seize the moment rather than regret it. But somehow, I ended up here, so scared that I'm unable to move, feeling a terrifying scream caught in my throat, unable to let it out, to even say a word, to ask for help. I knew I should have gotten out of this situation the moment I realized what I had gotten myself into. I shouldn't have come here. It all started this morning when my twin sister, Anne, asked me to go on a boat ride with her. She said she had booked it in advance and had been so excited to go with her fiancé. They paid for and prepared everything, but he got called into work, and she didn't know what to do because they couldn't cancel. She didn't want to go alone. I couldn't say no. I could already see the disappointment on her face, so I agreed to go. I wasn't a big fan of the ocean, but a boat ride didn't seem too bad or demanding. After all, I'd just have to attend and sit through it. My mistake was not paying much attention to her yapping when she told me about it. Her speech was rousing, and I couldn't interrupt and ask her to start over because I wasn't listening. So I ended up on a boat facing my oldest fear. The floating horror in question arrived to pick us up when I realized what I had gotten myself into. I can't believe you're actually doing this with me. I mean, coral reef scuba diving is something anyone would love, but at such a depth. I thought you had some sort of sea phobia, Anne said. My heart started racing, and I sat down for a moment. I tried to breathe and control my distress, denying my thalassophobia, badly remembered by my sister, after she nagged me about our childhood and how she knew I told her something similar. I finally convinced her to stop searching for my deepest fears. Unlike Anne, I never forgot how everyone laughed at me when I confided in them. I couldn't bear being mocked again, especially now when I'd rather drown than do this. I had to get out of this boat, out of this situation. My palms were sweating, and I could hear my pulse in my ears. Boat engine starts. Oh no! Nope! No way. This can't be happening, I thought. Worst case scenarios flooding my mind. I felt like living all of them, from the overthinking that made my body tense and weak in sudden shifts. I think I'm going to be sick. I feel dizzy. I can't do this. I hated feeling this way, trapped between pessimism and irrational fear. Usually, I use overthinking to my advantage, avoiding anything that would inconvenience me, not to help me escape a real threat or possible deadly situation after filtering it through my thinking. What am I doing? What will I do? I am losing precious time in which I could have found an excuse to turn this boat around. My mind can't work under this pressure, and my body sure isn't very helpful. What's wrong? You seem kind of pale. I hope you're still up for this. I'm so excited to do this with you, Anne. I couldn't let her down. Not when she had that spark in her eyes. A spark I hadn't seen since we were kids. She looked like a 5-year-old on Christmas morning. And maybe I was just being paranoid. Don't worry. I won't ruin this for you. It's just a little motion sickness. I treacherously lied to my sister, with whom I had shared everything my whole life. I couldn't tell her the truth out of fear she'll laugh at me, and I would no longer feel just afraid, but also ashamed and upset. Well then, stop overthinking. As long as you don't get swimming sickness, you'll be fine. We're almost there. Anne smiled warmly, in her specific way that usually melted my worries. But now, it only calmed me enough to avoid turning into a lunatic. We started putting on our equipment as we moved farther and farther into the deep ocean. 1,000 meters? 2,000 meters? It's been a while since we were able to see any land. I didn't want to think about the depth we were at, so I kept telling myself it wasn't that deep. Our ride wasn't longer than an hour, but the motorboat moved fast. Stop it. I won't think about this anymore. Meanwhile, my sister explained the use of everything in our gear and the emergency action plan that we shouldn't get in much detail with because it's just a precaution, as she learned in her training. I would describe it to you, but my mind got blank, and I can't remember a word she said. Sometimes I'm having a hard time paying attention when something else is bothering me, so my thoughts spiraled elsewhere. It was time to enter the water in order to be done and on our way by sunset. Anne dove in head first, waiting for me. I entered slowly from the edge. I think by this time it was clear I wasn't thrilled to do this, so she waited to make sure I'd actually follow her. I wasn't afraid of water or swimming, and the ocean was calm today. If the waves had matched my anxiety, I wouldn't have come this far. I closed my eyes and submerged myself. The world around me and all my worries vanished briefly. I felt weightless and my mind cleared. But the quiet was deafening, and it would soon turn eerie. Once I got used to the feeling, I opened my eyes and my stomach tightened. I felt so small and exposed. All I could see was water, shades of blue forming a bottomless void, darker and darker when you dared to venture below. My sister was having a blast. Her eyes were wide and curious, and her smile kept widening. She pulled my hand to go deeper. I didn't like that idea, but losing myself in this place, with no landmarks to help me navigate for sure, wasn't better. We swam, and I focused on inhaling and exhaling slowly to calm myself, counting every breath rather than the minutes I still had to endure this. 56, 57, 58. I kept swimming slowly to avoid getting tired. What if I reached exhaustion here and didn't have the strength to return to the surface? Cynical me gets all kinds of ideas, but they aren't important now, since I have bigger things to worry about. I hoped my sister would get bored faster, so we could get out of here. It wasn't long until I saw it. At first, I thought we'd been down here for hours, and the sky had darkened with nightfall. But I knew I was wrong, because a few moments later, the lighting changed again. I could see the warm daylight filtering through the surface, like it does through tree branches. 120, 121, 122. Anne noticed it too, and looked up. But the surroundings above us didn't seem to have changed. The second time it happened, it was more sudden and got even darker than before. But like the first time, it faded before our eyes could adjust. I started to worry because I realized faster than Anne what was happening. My body was overcome with fatigue, and I was distressed. You could see the unsettling look on my face as I glanced at my sister, too afraid to check the surroundings. Unlike me, Anne let her reflexes kick in and looked up and down to figure things out. She wasn't agitated or scared. She just lost the charming smile she'd had moments ago and now looked serious. I wanted to curl up and hide. My heart pounded in my chest, so I started to slowly close my eyes, trying to disappear for a second. Just then, my sister grabbed my hand. She managed to pull me just a bit closer, and when I opened my eyes, I saw it. 134, 135, 136, 137. We were both stunned, and it felt like the whole world stopped. I tried to keep breathing, but it felt as though this place and I were frozen in time. It was right in front of us, and I could only see a small part of it, yet it was massive. I couldn't comprehend the size difference in that moment. Its big eye was staring at us, cold and emotionless. This is how my nightmares always began. I would see it and try to swim away, but never managed to escape before waking up. It would catch me and swallow me whole. But in my mind, I imagined the stories you are told as a kid, or the ones you see in movies. This was entirely different. Facing a gigantic whale, feeling it look through your fears, not knowing what to do, or if you'll live to see tomorrow. 149, 150, 151. My eyes were wide open now, pupils dilated, and blood freezing in my veins. I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest to get away from it all. Since I couldn't, I didn't know what to do. I wanted to swim to shore, but I was too afraid. I thought that moment would never end until I felt it. Anne grabbed my feet and pushed me toward the surface. 171, 172, 173, 174. After she gave me that boost, I felt like I had the strength to keep going. I swam as fast as I could, not looking back to avoid letting fear overwhelm me. I could see the surface, the sun, and in no time, the sky and the boat. I scrambled in, and as soon as I felt the solid ground beneath my feet, I rubbed my eyes and tried to adjust them to the light as quick as possible. 226, 227,228. I looked in all directions. Water, water, water. All I could see was the damn ocean. I waited a little more, kept looking, but there was nothing. Exhaustion and despair washed over me. I kept searching in sight, but it was hopeless. I couldn't see Anne anywhere. I collapsed onto the cold wooden deck, and tears started rolling down my cheeks. I felt like I was falling apart, so I just stood there for a while, sobbing. I thought about how foolish I'd been not to tell her. Everyone laughed at me for nothing. If I had just told her, she would have understood why I didn't want to do this. I was terrified of whales. Maybe we would have turned back, and this would never have happened. I'm sorry. I kept whispering through my sobs. I knew no one would laugh at me now. I wished I had conquered my fear earlier, so I could have been the one to give her one more breath to take. The end. One last thing. The room was dim, filled with the soft beep of machines and the sterile smell of antiseptic. The air, thick with the weight of illness, seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself knew that something important was about to happen. Outside the bedroom, the sun had begun to set, casting shadows across the walls. Little did I know that this would be our last conversation. I sat at the edge of my sister's bed, watching her sickly form. My once strong sibling was now bedridden. She was barely recognizable under the thin hospital sheets. The illness had taken all of the color from her face. The pain had made her quiet. Her usual loud laughter was now replaced by a smile that barely reached her eyes. It had been months since the doctors had said there was nothing more to be done, but I'd clung to the hope that she would get better. Hope, I had come to realize, was a luxury we couldn't afford anymore. I saw my sister every day after work. I would talk to her about everything that happened at work and some family gossip. I shared some jokes with her, even though I knew she wouldn't or couldn't respond. The hospice nurse said to expect her transition any day, but honestly, I didn't. I just wanted my oldest sister back. But nothing surprised me more than what she said to me one afternoon. She turned her head towards me and opened her eyes. She grabbed my hand as she tried to get the words out. "Claire," she said, her voice cracking. "There's something that I need to get out before I die." I leaned closer, trying to ignore the pang of anxiety that tightened my chest. "What is it, Jean? You can tell me anything." She squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly firm for someone so weak. Her eyes held a gleam of urgency that I hadn't seen in a long time. "I got to get this off my chest. It's bad, very bad. You will think that it's something terrible, something unforgivable." I stared at her, not sure how to respond. The words felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. I had always known my sister went through something dramatic when I was away at college. Our parents and grandparents never told me what it was because they wanted me to focus on school. Every time I came home on a break, her and my parents would have this unspoken conversation, and I would feel left out. By the time I graduated, it no longer bothered me, but now she's deciding to tell this secret on her deathbed. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What have you done?" She closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts, and when she opened them again, there was a deep sadness in her gaze. "It's about our stepfather. I never told you the truth about him, but I have to now. You deserve to know." My heart skipped a beat at the mention of my stepfather. He had been gone for years, disappeared when I was in junior high. I had never fully understood why he'd left or what had wholly happened. My mother had always been vague on the subject, speaking of him only in passing, and whenever I pressed for details, she would change the subject or tell me it wasn't important. But now, my sister is getting ready to tell me what happened to him and why everyone stopped talking about him. And it was big. I leaned in, my voice trembling as I asked, "What did you do?" Her eyes darkened, the weight of her words almost too much to bear. "I was into some things that Mom didn't like. One night, Iz got high with my boyfriend. We were at the park smoking in his car. Mom was upset that I missed curfew. She sent our stepdad to look for me. When he caught up with us, we were naked in the car. He was so made that he broke the window with his fists. My boyfriend and him got into a fight. He kept hitting Lance even after he stopped moving. So I took the flashlight out the back seat and hit our stepdad on the back of his head. But the thing is that I didn't stop until I saw blood dripping from his head. It was almost like I was having an out-of-body experience. My boyfriend woke up and saw the mess. He wanted to hide the body, and I helped him. I helped him cover it up, and I'm not proud of it. I thought I could escape it, that I could bury it, but it's always been there, eating away at me. Now I can't take it with me. My stomach twisted into knots. You're telling me that you and Lance murdered our stepdad? She hesitated. Yes. Then we drove to the bridge and dumped his body in the river. The words hit me like a physical blow. In the river, I repeated. Her face crumpled. Yes. And when I got home, I told Mom that he saw me naked and tried to kiss me. She was beside herself, crying for days. Grandma came over to comfort her, while Grandpa packed up all his things. His body was found weeks later, and there were no suspects. I really tried to forget. I told myself it was just an accident. It wasn't my fault, and that I had no choice. But I did, Claire. I had a choice. I could have done things differently. I could have gone to the police. But I didn't. I sat back, feeling as if the floor had dropped out from under me. A cold numbness spread through my veins. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin. The stepfather I had spent my whole life wondering about was killed by my sister. But why are you telling me this now? I managed to ask, my voice hoarse with emotion. Why after all this time? You could have kept this secret forever. Her grip on my hand tightened. Because I can't take it with me. I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't want you to carry this burden. You need to know the truth so you can decide what to do with it. So you can make your own choices. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. The weight of her confession pressed down on me. My sister had kept this secret for decades, burying it deep inside her. And now, with her life nearing its end, she was leaving me with it. A secret too big, too dangerous to keep. A secret that could destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. The machines in the room beeped in time with her slow, labored breaths. I watched her, this woman who had once been my best friend, now reduced to a shell of the person she had been. And in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't just deciding whether to reveal a secret. I was deciding what kind of person I wanted to be. In the end, I didn't know if I would ever be able to reveal the truth to the world. But for now, the secret is staying with me. Clay pigeons. It was 3 days since you last called. No, I should clarify, since you answered. Since you answered your damn phone and stopped breaking protocol. And it's not like you didn't know the rules. You needed to check in once every day. Not every 24 hours. Every day. Thursday before midnight, and then Friday, just as the day turned, counted as 2 check-ins. Yet you never stretched it like that. Always called at noon sharp. Another day where you were human and in vicinity of your landline. Mark had been huffing and puffing since day 2. But I assured him this wasn't like you, that something big and horrible and terrible must have happened. Maybe you were laying prone on the floor of your living room, and I was sheltered here, wondering why you weren't calling, while I should have been the one calling for help. By day 3, I was spiraling. You were caught in a trap. You were dismembered and possibly disemboweled. You had lost all sanity and feeling. Mark warned me that 24 hours more and we would need to call in control. I snapped and informed him I was perfectly aware of that, as well as I was perfectly aware of what control would do to you. I pleaded with him to give me your address. It was against every rule in the book, but I was sure he would understand. After all, you had been so diligent with it all. We never had to ask you for anything. You always did your check-ins and checkups by yourself. The phone kept ringing. By day 4, he relented. The first thing I noticed was the curtains. They were green and closed shut. A flyer was on your porch, flapping furiously in the wind. Its pages turned, advertising deals in meat and shampoo. Your house was straw, with flaying blue paint and a wrap-around porch. You had plants, and their leaves were dropping in thirst. I knocked on your door twice. You had one of these old-looking knockers, leaving the smell of iron lingering in my fingernails. I don't know what I expected, a hovel, perhaps, or a burrow hole, but everything looked very human to me. Or maybe it was all an act, and you were living in the garden hut. I circled the house, looking for any signs of life, and found none. Wind chimes were swaying softly in the distance, filling the air with a clicking sound. It sounded like a clock counting down. I knew I shouldn't, and under any other circumstances, I wouldn't. But I pressed my nose to your windows, one by one, hoping for any movement or sound from within. I found myself scanning the air for the smell of your dead body. But then I stopped. Maybe I was giving you too much credit. Maybe it was all an act, and you were all the way to the border by now. Mark had given me the security key. All agency-approved houses had one, even though you never knew. It must have been horrible to know that someone could enter your house at any time. Or at least, that was what Mark had said when I asked him, and then chose not to ask anything more. The door creaked, letting in an arc of sunlight. The first thing I noticed was the mirror on the floor, shards spreading in almost a perfect diameter. The second thing I noticed was the pigeon. It flapped furiously around the couch, leaving talon marks on the fabric. The couch matched the curtains, was the first thought I had. The second one was that it was you. Veronica? I asked, and my voice trembled, because this didn't make sense. And then the pigeon talked, and it was you. Amelia! And the pigeon couldn't cry, but I swear I heard its voice break. Amelia. I can't turn back. I closed the door behind me and reached for the light switch. What do you mean you can't turn back? I can't turn back, you echoed, and flew to the mirror. Your image multiplied in each shard until 3, 4. A flock of pigeons were staring back at me. I don't know why. You paused for a second and hoped from one tiny foot to the other. I can't remember how I look like anymore. Veronica, this is nonsense, I said, because I had to stick to protocol. It was our only chance to avoid control, after all. Have you tried your memory exercises? You have been so diligent with them. The pigeon huffed. You think I don't know that? And something about it startled me to my core. There was this animal, barely reaching up to my ankle. Yet, it was you, the 40-something woman to survive the shifting experiments, turning from a mole to a lion in the blink of an eye, and then back to human again. You had survived the monitors and the testing and the labs, only to be stuck as a pigeon. This was ridiculous. I got to my knees because, frankly, it was embarrassing to have to look down to see you. Veronica, control will be here in less than 6 hours. We need to prove them you are lucid. And most of all, human. Maybe it was because you were less than a foot tall, but your voice was very small all of a sudden. I am perfectly lucid, Amelia. As for human, there was a sound that might have been a laugh. I simply don't know how to be that anymore. Don't say that, I gasped. At least don't say that out loud. There was a long silence. And then, can I trust you? I almost laughed. You could turn into a bear if you wanted. Tear me in half. I broke into your house. I have been monitoring you every single day for the past 5 years. I was trying to beat control in its own game. The wind chime kept ringing. I can help you if you want. I all but ignored your question. I had been nothing but a surveillance camera to you for half a decade. But you have to promise me that you will turn back. Help me how? I can call the agency for you. You can do the speaking. I paused for a second. This is the reason you haven't called, right? Because you don't have, limbs? You can't pick up the phone? I sounded irrational, even to my own ears. Of course, the pigeon couldn't pick up the damn landline. It had no hands. You would do that? I would. But only if you promise to turn back by nightfall. Your voice cracked. I don't know if I can promise that. I don't know how to do that. I don't remember my own face. Nonsense, I called again. I will help you remember your face just fine. And I picked up the landline. Mark was confused, but relieved. Remarked how I had worried for nothing. And maybe I hadn't reached you yet. But as soon as you show me, you had to tell me to turn back and stop being such a fool. That everything was okay. and you were fine. And everything was fine. And nothing would go wrong ever, ever again. He sounded like a preacher, promising heaven to killers. In short, a whole load of bullshit. When he finally hung up, you flew up to the curtain rod. "Why would you do that?" you asked. And it was a brilliant question, because I hadn't the slightest idea myself. You know what control would do to you otherwise? My voice was small. I had to look up to you now. You huffed. The collar. I know. Everyone knew. It was a terrible, horrible thing, blocking any shifting until deemed appropriate again. Stuck as a human forever. Surely not such a terrible fate, as I had been stuck as a human from the moment I was born, and would likely remain one forever. Yet, why be a human forever, when you could be a different beast every hour? Yet, why be human at all? A small voice always echoed in the back of my mind. But once again, I pushed it down. Envy was one thing, self-hatred was another. Now, let's find your face. I clapped my hands, sounding like a school teacher. This encounter had to take a pleasant turn somehow, even if I had to grab it by the reins to do so. I had never seen your face myself. To me, you were just Veronica, a first name on a paper, and occasionally a voice in my ear. You were also a string of numbers and letters, a barcode detailing you as one of the few survivors. But you didn't need to know that. Do you have any family photos? Phone backgrounds? My voice trailed in the quiet of the house. He hit me. It all went still. Excuse me? He hit me. Your voice is steadier now. He hit me, and I needed a way out. I figured I could fly, but then he shot me, and this is when I notice that every feather on the floor is laced with your blood. And the smell I had been ignoring is there. It is tangy and metallic. You laugh. It is a desperate sound, coming out more like a croak. I had never heard an animal make a sound like that. Yet here you are. I guess you could say I asked for it, turned myself into a clay pigeon, a perfect target for him to shoot at. Nonsense, I snap. Don't talk like that about yourself. You keep talking, as if I had never interrupted. It was as if a slate had been wiped clean. I had been diligent with everything. I had been walking around the minefield, tiptoeing mostly, with the agency, with the calls, with him. He wouldn't let me shift. Said it was unnatural, that it was better if I embraced my true self, which, of course, was me being human. A croak escapes your beak again. I hadn't shifted in 5 years. This is my first time flying since I met you. And do you know what is the funny thing? I had been human for so long, yet I don't remember my own face. I was just his extension, I think. Your feathers are puffed, and you reach down, nibbling on a feather on your chest. And the worst thing is, I am afraid. I am afraid to try to shift back again, because then what happens with the gunshot? You are speaking as if I am not there, as if you are addressing an audience of thousands, giving a pragmatic lecture on anatomy. Your voice is devoid of feeling, and I have an overbearing need to reach out to you. What if it pokes open a hole on my chest? What if it cuts off an artery in my leg, and then I need to amputate it? My voice is gentle for once. Let me see, I didn't think you would. Yet you fly down and land on my arm. I draw in a sharp breath. I had always dreamed of a bird landing on me like that, ever since watching it in old animated movies. Your feathers are stained red, and when I reach for your right foot, you tremble. It's okay, I whisper. And because you are a pigeon, I reach and stroke the feathers on the top of your head. It's okay, I repeat, mostly to myself, because while I have studied animal medicine, I am surely not a human doctor. You might be lucky. It looks like nothing but a scary flesh wound. But you are right. I have no idea what this means for your human body. What is your favorite color? I ask, and you angle your head to the side. Orange, I guess. Although I never gave it much thought. You are light as a feather. Why orange? I love the sunrise. All is dark. And then there is orange. And then there is a new day. That's a lovely answer, I say, because I need to tether you back to yourself. What do you remember of your mother's eyes? And then I curse myself because you grew up in the academy. What would you know of your mother's eyes? Yet, despite everything, you answer. They were brown, I think. I talk you through your memories and your dreams. We recall your training and exercises, your memory drills and protocol compliances, who you were before and who will you be after. Animal and human anatomy, femurs and phalanxes, muscles and arteries, and how your brain expands, and how your heart beats. We spend all night talking. How you are a human, but you don't have to be one. How you want to be one. How it is worth taking the risk. And then there is a flash, and you are on the floor, dried blood on your side, the inheritance. Christ, Beck snapped, giving a start. Before her stood a tall man in a butler's suit. His lips curled, and he lifted a sardonic brow as he gave a small, mocking bow. Her eyes moved from his oddly fat feet up his short, sturdy legs, where the tail of his coat hung below his knees, and moved back and forth in the slight breeze. His hips were narrow, but his long body widened into a thick paunch. Then his chinless head squatted on shoulders, no wider than his girth. His long, thin nose occupied his face. "You frightened the bejesus out of me. Who the hell are you?" she asked. "Who is this? And why is he inside my aunt's house? And why is he dressed in a black suit straight from the early 20th century?" His smile widened into a toothy grin. "Falstaff, the butler, at your service, ma'am." His hooded eyes blinked slowly, and he bowed again. The man was repulsive to look at, but Beck was drawn into the dark depths of his strange eyes. With an effort, she broke their gaze. Auntie had a butler? She never said. Over the years, Beck had kept in contact via letters. Aunt Bess didn't own a computer, and now Auntie was gone, presumed dead. That's what the police said. It was obvious to Beck that they had given up hope of finding her great-aunt. Falstaff cleared his throat to reclaim her wandering attention. The left side of his upper lip curled in a smile. Or was that a snarl? "I think if you check, you will find mention of me in Bess's will. She and I became very close. She was alone." He paused. "And lonely. What the hell is this guy insinuating? Auntie allowed you to call her Bess?" She swallowed hard. "Surely not. As I said, she was lonely. She felt deserted. She loved me." His lips opened over his large teeth in an approximation of a cheeky grin. "Like a son. She wanted to change her will, but before she could, she disappeared." "It's not true," Beck gasped. "She would never. She loved me. I loved her. I'm her niece, grand niece, whatever, who never visited her. I was overseas. If it's any business of yours." Why was she defending herself against the hired help? What he was saying was preposterous. Beck gritted her teeth. "I'm her niece. I'm blood." "Yes, blood." Falstaff blinked slowly. Was he goading her? Blood. So much thicker than water. He licked his lips. "As you say, whatever. The will was not changed, and I remain Falstaff the butler, at your service, ma'am." He clicked his heels and gave another little bow, stepped back, and gestured for her to enter. She ignored him. She didn't need his invitation. "I was hoping to revisit the old place alone, so you can go back to wherever butlers go, and I'll look after myself." A wry smile tugged at her mouth. "I sound just like Great-Aunt Bess at her autocratic best." An apology automatically rose to her lips. To hell with that. Just who does this guy think he is? Freaking creep. Why am I so jittery? Her tongue flicked out over her red lips, but she kept her gaze steady. "The house is mine." Falstaff's smile disappeared. His nostrils flared, and his coal-black, unblinking eyes stared down his long nose. Beck lifted her chin and stared back. Prick. With head and bunk stiff, he turned on his heel into the gloomy interior. "What's with the fancy dress costume?" she demanded. He turned around, the movement a slither of insolence. "Oh, just something our Aunt Bess liked to do for guests," he replied. How dare he? Our Aunt Bess, indeed. She liked to relive history. It gave our visitors a bit of a thrill. Tourists are stupid. There it was again, that infuriating superiority and mockery. We could, and did, frighten the fools with tall tales of hauntings and death. Aunt Bess and I enjoyed the game. Solid, sensible Aunt Bess playing dress-up? Surely not. I want to be alone. Falstaff bowed smartly as he replied, "Perhaps Madam would like me to bring her bags in. Shall I put them in the master bedroom?" "Sure. Why not?" She tossed him the car keys, which he snapped up with his left hand in a strangely smooth and agile movement for someone who looked so awkward in his own skin. He moved forward. She backpedaled as he passed, surprised and confused by a fleeting apprehension. Shaking herself, she stepped onto the black and white marble tiles of the foyer. Automatically, her hand reached to the right and flicked the switch. The brassy brightness of electric light pushed the shadows back. The old Dutch lamp still hung above the entrance, but an ugly black cord snaked through the decorative fretwork and into the base where it connected to a bulb, instead of the genteel neglect of her memory. The harsh electricity showed dilapidated antique furniture and fading decor. She threw her red bag onto the armchair, making a bloody splash against the faded green velvet. She kicked off her red stilettos, making a matching puddle on the floor. She noticed a dimmer switch and twisted the knob. "That's better." A smile curved Beck's mouth as she gazed around. Her mother had brought 8-year-old Becky here to live, just for a few weeks, until after the divorce. Becky ended up staying for 36 months, during which, under the generous care of her forthright great-aunt, she blossomed. Aunt Bess taught her that you could love without anger, manipulation, and shouting. Beck bit her lip to prevent the tears. Be sensible. Auntie was very old. She had a good innings. Beck heard the old lady's rusty voice. Buck up, girlie. That's life. Look to the future. Yuch! Beck wrinkled her nose. What was that disagreeable, swampy smell? She spun slowly around. A veil of dust made everything appear out of focus. Hang on. I thought that guy said he was the butler. Why is everything so dusty? Moving further down the hall, she said aloud, Lazy bastard. He is so gone when I get settled. Thud, thump, thud, thump, thud, thump. Beck froze, heart pulsing painfully in her throat. She turned and saw the butler's legs disappear around the curve of the stairwell. Had he heard her? Too bad. Perhaps it will improve his attitude. His tread thudded resentfully into the dusty carpet as the back corner of the valise thumped the stair. Thud, thump. Beck laughed and returned to exploring her surroundings. Bet the bossy old broad's turning in her grave, she murmured, running a well-manicured finger tipped in blood over the arm of the settee. A photograph of the fabulous old Tartar, looking her imperious best, glared down at Beck from high on the wall. She always appeared fearsome until you got to know her, Beck thought with affection. She squinted at the picture in the golden gloom. Good grief, it could be me, she thought. The Aunt Bess in the picture was younger than when Beck knew her. Straight-backed, strong and indomitable in her khaki riding habit. She held a rifle over her left shoulder and rested one leather-booted foot on the head of a dead lion. I was so happy here, Beck said, addressing the portrait. I did love you, you know. I'm so sorry if you felt I neglected you. She swallowed back her tears. Where did you disappear to, Auntie? I'll find you, I promise, or die trying. Her eyes moved down the hall. Instead of snarling from the wall by the side of the photo, a once beautiful lion's head stared up at the ceiling from atop a glass-fronted credenza. Just another tattered remnant of the past. Fierce eyes, now dull with dusty cataracts. Its roar inaudible. Back then, timid as Becky was, she had been fascinated by the ferocious head, mesmerized by such a powerfully alive image of death. Come on, touch her, child, Aunt Bess said. I killed her myself while Gunter and I were on safari. Must be 15 years ago. She won't bite, I promise. Her great-aunt placed Becky's small hand on the coarse, furry head. Oh, Becky breathed. A real lioness. Magnificent, isn't she? Aunt Bess's stern face lit up, and her smoky laughter boomed through the house. To the left of the credenza stood the same hall table Beck remembered from her childhood, topped by the same glass tank containing the same dead reptiles. A baby crocodile and two stumpy-tailed blue-tongue lizards still lurked in the semi-dark. At 8, she had no knowledge of anything other than the small, untidy city unit where she and her parents lived. How exciting this strange house had seemed to her. What wonders it held. What are they? Becky asked. Her great-aunt took some pains with her explanations, enjoying the chance to educate. Becky's attention wandered as her eyes explored the other photos and memorabilia on the walls. Come with me. Aunt Bess grabbed the little girl's hand and led her to a door hidden behind the staircase. Open it, she commanded. Becky looked up. Go ahead, her aunt encouraged, her eyes promising excitement and adventure. Becky's hand turned the large metal knob and pulled the door's heaviness wide. They descended into the cool cellar. Along with the root vegetables and pantry shelves loaded with preserves and pickles, stood a long glass case containing an enormous saltwater crocodile, caught mid-snap. That's the croc that got my Gunter. I plugged the bastard right between the eyes, I did, Auntie said. Too late to save Gunter, though. She paused. In the end, I couldn't bear to have the horrid creature on display upstairs. But neither can I get rid of him. He is my last contact with my darling Gunter. They are one. The creature was repulsively fascinating. He had a long snout, hooded eyes, and a wide head jammed onto his body, which widened out around his middle and tapered down to a long tail. Becky squatted down near the huge reptile's head. Its open maw was full of vicious-looking teeth. His eyes looked alive. He was hungry. He was angry. He wanted revenge. Arg! Becky jumped up and hid her face in Aunt Bess's skirt. What on earth's got into you, child? He's alive. He wants to eat me. Her aunt wrapped her in a warm embrace and gave a laugh. You silly goose. He is quite dead, I assure you. Come on, time for cordial and cake. Beck could hear her aunt's deep laughter and booming voice echoing up from the past. A shiver of apprehensive excitement tingled her spine. Is the beast still down there? She turned to her left. Beck sucked air, felt her bladder contract. Falstaff stood in the doorway, watching her. He raised his eyebrows in benign inquiry. She ignored him. The cellar door opened easily this time. She flicked on the light. A single bare bulb dangling from the cobwebbed ceiling struggled to throw off the gloom. It moved in the slight breeze, creating weird, moving shadows. Musty air spiraled up to her, redolent with memories. The rough, strong feel of Aunt Bess's hand, the smell of earthy vegetables, the sharpness of pickling vinegar, and the sight of that amazing creature, so dangerous, so dead. With a dry mouth, Beck ducked her head and thudded down the dusty, wooden stairs. The glass case was empty. The lid hung to one side. The outline of the creature was clear in the dust, as though he had only recently vacated his glass coffin. Where had he gone? Beck's nostrils flared, assailed by a fetid, swampy miasma. She searched the shadows, half expecting to find the reptile hiding in their depths. Idiot, she mocked herself. A noise rustled behind her. She swung to face the stairs. A shadow stepped forward. Jesus, Falstaff. She clenched her hands and spoke through her teeth. You nearly gave me a heart attack. I am sorry I startled you. Falstaff's oily obsequiousness belied the glint in his dark orbs. He gave a snort, showed his teeth. Beck stared into the reptilian black of his expressionless, hooded eyes. Her pupils dilated. She found herself unable to move, unable to think. He stepped closer, brought up his hand. Cool leather, caressed her face. The cobwebbed light flickered, giving his movements a jerky, surreal effect. She smelled the earthy, overpowering maleness of him. Her senses reeled. Time held its breath. "What you want?" Beck forced the words from her constricted throat. "Just you," he grunted. "My Becky." She moved her head from side to side. "No, you've always known. You, the last remnant of Bess," Falstaff hissed. He lifted his other hand, placed it at the base of her throat, where her carotid pounded irregularly. His grip tightened. Goose flesh prickled Beck's spine. Her heart fluttered in its bony cage. She couldn't withdraw her gaze, couldn't move. He brought ice-cold lips down. His fetid breath entered her lungs. The flickering light snapped off ambition. "Arms up," the man said. A smile touched my lips, and I did as I was told. I knew that I'd fucked up. There was no denying it. This meeting was a formality, not a death sentence. I lifted my arms lightly above my head. My suit coat hung along my shoulders like torn-back sails. The man patted me down, unholstered my gun, and tucked it along the back of his waistband, and I looked at him with a questioning glance. The nerve of this one, I thought, but remained silent, smelling the wafting cigar smoke pouring out of Father's office. "You'll get it back when business is concluded. This your only piece?" he asked, sizing me up. I nodded and tucked in my shirt along the waist again, shimmied my pants into a better position. The man stood aside, gesturing for me to enter. My hand wrapped around the brass doorknob, and the thick wood creaked inward, and all at once the smell of Father's cigars hit me harder than a ton of bricks. My eyes watered. Making my way inside through the haze reminded me of the night we went down to the docks to pitch the body of Lenny Chesnetter over into the dark water. "Not me," Lenny's voice echoed in my mind. "I didn't do nothin'. I swear it. Nothin', I tell ya. The gunshot always sounds louder when it isn't you pulling the trigger." I entered the lavish office, my father sitting behind his desk like an old king at his throne. And to the chair along the right of the desk, my brother, turning his head to look at me. Even for all the years since the day of his automobile accident, I can never get used to the sight of that scar. A jagged line running along the left temple toward the middle of the cheek. "Have a seat," Father said. I listened to my shoes clacking across the hardwood, listening to the sounds of the door shutting behind me, but didn't have to look back to know that the man outside had done it. Other scents were mingling in the air, Father's cologne, as well as my brother's. One of the housekeepers had set up a bouquet in this dark room, as if it had seemed to mask the constantly wafting cigar smoke drifting up toward the ceiling. It didn't. I found the open chair to my father's right diagonal from his spot behind the desk, and took the wide way around, pulling the chair back so that the three of us now sat almost in a perfect triangle. I did this because whatever bad water had been spilled between my brother and me, I wasn't in a fighting mood. Maybe it was the Irish in me, some instinctual thing to wanna fuck strange women and fight all the goddamn time. My brother scoffed at this, gusting his air, and flapped his coat back to the center of his torso, over the velvet blue vest beneath. A single gold chain clipped to one of the buttonholes. The same pocket watch I gave him for Christmas 2 winters ago. I sat with ease and crossed my right leg over the other. "Let's get down to it, boys," Father said. "Which one of you did it?" There was silence for a moment. My brother and I exchanged a glance, not saying a word. "All right, if that's how you want to do it," he said, pulling back one of the desk drawers and withdrawing a Colt 1911 .45 semi-automatic pistol. He thumbed back the hammer and pointed at me. "Which one of you sons of bitches killed Jimmy Booker?" "Oh, you think I fucking did it, do ya?" I asked with a sneer. "Go on then, shoot me. Get it over with," I said, resting my hands along the armrests. In truth, I didn't give a shit one way or the other. I looked over at my brother, trying to read his expression, but he sat there with a calm that I'd only ever seen a few times before. For once, I was the loose cannon here. For once, I was the one losing my mouth, when what I needed to do was shut the fuck up. "Why don't you point the gun there?" I said, pointing at my brother. "He's always the one stirring up problems in this family. Put one right between his fucking eyes and let's get this thing over with." The sound of the gunshot was deafening. I flinched at the recoil and, to my amazement, realized that I'd still been alive. My eyes widened as a smile crept onto my face. I looked at Father. The gun had been pointed upward, and the muzzle drifted a thin line of smoke from the barrel up to the ceiling, where it mixed with the wafting cigar smoke. "Are you fucking crazy?" I asked, sitting forward. My foot dropped to the hardwood floor with a thud. "You know how many coppers walk these streets?" I asked, squinting at him. "I own the cops," Father said with a smile, and set the gun down atop the desk there, where it sat pointing between both of us, and not at one of us in particular. Father picked up his cigar and gently rounded the ash from the lit end, brought it to his lips where he bit down lightly, perching it along the corner of his teeth. "I'm gonna ask you both again. Which one of you did it?" he asked, drawing on the chewed bit of his cigar, with a wash of gray smoke drifting down from his parted lips. His wrinkled eyes studied us one by one. "Does it matter?" my brother chimed in. "That guy was a crook. Bookie or not, he's been stealing from us for years." "Not us," he said. "From me. And I know that he's been doing it But what both of you don't know is that Jimmy Booker has been fixing bets for the better part of the last 2 decades. It was only a matter of time before we took the hammers to his kneecaps, but I would have let him live. You smug prick. Father leaned forward and stared at brother. Scraps. That's what he took from me. Scraps. Like a dog. And one of you 2 numbskulls whacked him before I could set him down and get the truth out of him good and proper. Father sat back. Besides, nobody gets snuffed out in this town without my saying so. Not even my dumb fuck, petulant rat children prancing around like they're doing the Lord's work. Is that what you thought you were doing? The Lord's work? He slammed his fist down along the top of the wooden desk, killing a man in broad daylight. 2 days before the race of the fucking century. He stood quickly, the chair behind him falling back as he towered over the desk in front of us. Do you 2 idiots have any idea how much fucking money I was going to make off of that race? 55 large, I said. I knew I'd seen the books. How much money did you take him for, anyway? Father asked, pressing his knuckles down along the top of the desk. How much money did you recover from Jimmy's safe? All of it, I said. How much? He asked again. His pupils were so large that you couldn't see the blues there anymore. Only the blackened coals for eyes where color had once been. We're wasting time, my brother said absently. He had begun running his fingers along the scar across the left temple beside his eye. He did this, of course, an old gambling tell of his, when he bluffed. We had another bookie lined up, south side, Giovanni's man. My father was stunned into silence. He turned and picked up his expensive leather chair and set it upright once more, collapsing into it. Let me get this straight. You killed my man so that you could use the Italians. Do you think because we have some truce with those Goombas, you can take out one of our own and fix bets with another organization? Looks like you boys are trying to run this family. Father rubbed his eyes, his cigar still perched in his teeth along the corner of his mouth. He breathed in deep, the cigar cherry lighting up the inside of his palm, and he pulled it from his lips, curling an index finger around it, wet and gnarled. His hand perched along the armrest, a thick line of smoke wafting from the end of the half-chewed cigar. You boys will be the death of me, he said with his eyes closed. He turned to look first at my brother and then at me. What gave you smartasses the bright idea to fix bets with the Italians? My brother glanced at me and then back to Father. Because it's our time to move on their territory. The Italians are weak. They lost 3 good men to bank robberies, another 2 to the bombing last month. My father's eyes glinted. between the three of us, none of us saying the thing there beneath the surface. That father had been orchestrating the bombings. There had been dozens in the months past. He'd been killing off the Italians from whatever shadows that he'd been operating in, beneath the guise of a truce all this time. The bombs that had been planted, the coppers tipped off about the bank robberies, was only a fraction of the work that had been done. Explosives were planted in engine rooms, aboard steamers, docked in Boston Harbor, prized fighters dying suddenly from arsenic. There was a level of depravity not spoken of within this room, and between the three of us, nobody had said a word. "Why, Jimmy?" Father asked. "Why in all of this did you take out my very own fucking bookie?" I sat forward, an elbow cocked behind me along the armrest. "Because Jimmy wasn't who you thought he was." I stared across the desk. My brother shifted beside me. "Jimmy wasn't just fixing beds for you. He was fixing them for the Italians at the same time. He might have been taking crumbs from you over the years, but he's been raking it in hand over fist with the Italians for a decade or more. Jimmy is a distant cousin to the Giovanni Syndicate, married to one of our very own." "How do you know all this?" Father asked, raising an eyebrow. "You're not the only one who bribes cops," Brother said. There was laughter then. Father sat back against the leather chair and stared for a time at the ceiling, running his thick fingers through his thinning red hair. "Word on the street is Jimmy's been letting bits and pieces of information slip past our lines for years. How do you think the Italians were able to take the South Side so quickly?" Father, puzzled by this, shook his head and sat up once more. He centered himself behind the desk and laced his fingers. He seemed to know without knowing. "What do you suppose we do about all of this?" he asked, looking at me. I looked at my brother, who finally smiled. "We know the name of their horse," Brother said. "Consider it a parting gift from Jimmy." The next day had been one of the fairer ones of the season, almost pleasant. The sun was shining brilliantly overhead. I squinted through my tinted glasses, my cap tucked low over the eyes. I stood in the open air, smelling the vibrant scents of the women in attendance all around, their floral dresses puffed beneath the small of their waists like delicate flowers, concealing something even sweeter there beneath. My eyes moved across the sea of faces there, the onlookers waiting for the next race to begin, and with the gunshot that rang out, a few around were startled. But the next round of horses were padding down the track. Our horse wasn't among them, but was the next to follow, so I had little interest in this race, except for the equestrian appeal of horses galloping along their curved track, with each of their jockeys whipping their hindquarters in feverish gait. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause. The leader among them a tan beauty with a red-jacketed jockey standing above and hunched over the bobbing head of the horse that he rode. They crossed the finish line, the crowd erupting into feverish applause. "Ours is next," my brother said beside me. All was taken care of. I needn't bother with going over the morning's events, as I'd known well into the mid-afternoon what had transpired. Giovanni now lay along a cold slab downtown, the mortician sifting through the gunshot wounds that had been inflicted by the Tommy guns that took out their entire entourage as they approached their prize-winning horse named Winn-Dixie. Our man inside had seen to poisoning Winn-Dixie with enough tranquilizers to kill a horse, to pun, but we'd be there to watch it as it happened. The horses had left the track, their riders collecting their wreaths of flowers before padding along the high walls to adoring and cheering fans. "You're certain it's been taken care of?" I asked, looking at him, my eyes trailing over the scar along the side of his face. "It's done," he said, without looking at me, feeling my eyes running along the course of that jagged line. I focused forward once more. "Father will be pleased," I said. There wasn't anything else to say. This was the first in many events moving forward. The decision that we were consciously making in a coup to take out our flesh and blood and run the organization the way that we saw fit. The world was moving right along beyond the cozy place that Father had built and remained. This was the world of the steam invention, industrialization, changing political landscapes, and even grander concepts that eluded Father. It seemed that in just an evening's pass, the world had left him there, a fossil amongst the living, and that no world would welcome his old ideals and aging perspective. I glanced at my brother now, not knowing how long he'd been staring at me. Both of us knew. "When this is all over, you'll take the north, and I'll take the south side," he said. I focused my attention on the track before us and nodded. I would take over my father's estate, and my brother would take control of the Italians. Boston was ours for the taking. There was a long pause between us, waiting for the next race to begin. A stir of excitement amongst the onlookers. And then the gunshot came. The gates opened. Our horse, Lil Red 1, roared past the others, but at the third gate, Winn-Dixie trotted forward in hopefulness, keeping a fair speed at first, before arching its head backward and falling onto the ground, with its back legs splayed as it rolled to its side, knocking its rider from its back. Everyone jumped to their feet and stood watching the downed rider, Winn-Dixie, writhing in pain, kicking its legs beneath it as it lay upon its side, bobbed its head as it scraped gently along the ground there. Everyone around murmuring with feverish anxiety. Winn-Dixie, panting, kicked its feet a few more times, stopped, heaved, and let out the last of its breath. Lil Red 1 crossed the finish line in first place, without the other riders knowing what had happened. I glanced at my brother. The crook of a small smile touched his lips. I looked back to Winn-Dixie, forgetting all about our own prized horse winning the race, and stared with wide eyes in horror at the fallen stud with his rider knelt beside it. One small hand rested along the rib cage of the dead animal. "That settles it," Brother said. He turned to look at me, and I to him, finally, forcing my eyes from Winn-Dixie. "Pleasure doing business with you," he said, extending a hand. I shook it, feeling the embrace of my brother there amongst a crowded bandstand of race enthusiasts. For a moment, I felt the warmth of his hand, a subtle reminder of the man that he was, a handshake with someone that I loved, and then felt the cold and calculated business transaction that had just concluded. "Till we see each other again," I said. We parted there. He took his leave and mingled with the crowd beyond, making his way down the steps, rounded the corner, and was gone. That was the last time that I'd spoken to my brother aloud. Not long after the events of that day, my father had been fatally stabbed to death late one evening. Of course, this was part of the plan all along, though I had never been the one holding the knife. It was my brother, releasing us unto the splinters of this syndicate. It wasn't long before the fire started, as his men had been ordered to take out the Italians in force. The gunshots, for a time, had been frequent and unrelenting, often in broad daylight, but skirmishes clamored through the nights in those early days. Only rumors of these prominent Italian family members slain in cold blood, or that of the houses that had been burned in the early morning hours while they slept cozied in their beds. My brother is always the benefactor, or presumed to have been. As I sat in Father's study, swirling a brandy, I'd not had the slightest care. My brother, unbeknownst to him, had been working for me all along, doing the dirty work with blood-stained hands, as the plans that I'd set into motion had finally come to pass. "Cheers," I said, raising a toast. Confessions of the Wicked. Trigger warning. This story contains mentions of suicide, murder, SA, and drug abuse to whomever it may concern in the future. I must confess, Lisa clutched the letter tightly in her trembling hands, her heart racing as she tried to process the words before her. Each sentence felt like a distant echo, her mind struggling to comprehend the reality they presented. The ink on the paper blurred into a haze as she stared at it as if it were a passage from a dramatic novel rather than a message meant for her. One shaky hand dropped to the desk, the wooden surface cool against her palm, while the other instinctively covered her mouth in a futile attempt to stifle a gasp. A powerful wave of dread surged through her, leaving her muscles taut and aching with anxiety. Feeling an urgent need to escape the suffocating atmosphere, she pivoted on her toes, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps, and made a fast beeline for the door, desperate to put distance between herself and the shocking revelation contained in that letter. Her mind raced wildly, grappling with the cruel reality of working in the very prison where her brother had been a devoted inmate for the last 10 years. The stark, cold walls echoed with memories of their shared laughter, now replaced by a haunting sense of despair. Every day, she poured herself into her work, driven to the brink of insanity as she navigated the complex legal system, desperately seeking a way to free him. Yet, in the quiet moments, a dark shadow loomed over her thoughts, the chilling possibility that all her efforts might still fall short in saving him from the fate the letter she held had predicted. She remembered the moment she first heard about her brother's arrest in South Korea. A wave of despair crashing over her. Confusion and heartbreak gripped her as she tried to fathom why he had been taken from her. In those early days, she had poured herself into studying the laws of both Korea and the United States, desperate to understand the gravity of the 24 murder charges and 2 counts of attempted murder he faced. Late nights spent poring over legal texts had become her refuge, each page turning fueled by an unwavering determination to bring him back and piece together the chaos that had upended their lives. The murders occurred in the United States, which ultimately led Lisa's family to seek refuge in South Korea. They were fleeing the shadows cast by a chilling truth. Richard was a serial killer. Disturbingly, Lisa's parents were aware of Richard's dark nature long before the FBI uncovered his gruesome activities. He had confided in them, revealing his violent tendencies and chilling declaration that he would continue his spree regardless of the consequences, even if apprehended. Richard's descent into darkness began at a young age. When he was just 17, he was discovered covered in blood at a crime scene, a scene that would mark his 3rd murder. This incident forced him to come clean about his heinous actions. Under pressure from law enforcement, Richard detailed each horrifying crime he committed, recounting events with a disturbing calmness, as if sharing mundane stories instead of the tragedies he inflicted. For Lisa's family, the awareness of his twisted mind and the violent past they were escaping only deepened the turmoil they felt in their new home. Their parents seriously thought about turning him in to the police, but then they saw Lisa. How could they abandon their youngest? Their son had taken lives. It's infuriating to think they were so desperate to protect him that they convinced themselves he could get away with it, claiming self-defense. And if that failed, they had the audacity to believe he could plead insanity. It's maddening. They were determined not to let their family suffer the consequences of his monstrous actions. They had fought hard for their so-called American dream, and now they were willing to ignore the reality of murder just to keep it intact. I've committed some really questionable acts that I have come to wholeheartedly regret. Some may ask why I even did such a thing. The answer will always be that I do not know myself. You can call it an insatiable urge. Lisa stood before her brother's cell, her heart pounding in her chest as she fought to steady her breath. Each inhalation came in shaky increments, a desperate attempt to keep her presence unnoticed in the cold, dimly lit hallway. She searched for some sort of implication to give truth to that letter. All that was in the cell were her brother's two very active cellmates. They slept serenely, coddled up like children against the wall of their respective bunks. As she tightly gripped the cold metal bar of the cell, an electrifying tension filled the air, causing the inmates to stir in panic. It was as if a primal instinct had been awakened within them, leading them to believe they were suddenly thrust into a perilous struggle for survival. Much like the brutal realities one often faces in the dark corners of the slums. The brawny ginger had his eyes wide and red with irritation. He almost flew from his frame from the banging that Lisa's small palm had brought to life with a touch. The other, smaller but still muscular, had softly turned himself over, almost unbothered by the verbal intrusion caused by the one female CO showing up at their block in the dead of night. There was only a lustful glare there. She sighed and glared at them, her stare demanding to see the last person in the shadows. She hoped from the bottom of her heart that her brother would creep up from behind the twin bunks. A silence made static pass through her ears, and her brother didn't emerge. Instead, that small inmate crept from his laid-down position and mirrored Lisa at the entrance to the cell. He breathed hard with a tangy output, showering Lisa's face with disgust. She scoffed as she pressed on her heels, steadily taking a step back. To Lisa, the inmate in front of her looked like a starved beast. She often saw the man in front of her teaching other inmates how to cope with their new life in prison. As an inmate himself, he should not have had the right to do so, but his compassion and leadership led people to look up to him. He was honestly the sweetest man that she could claim she met in prison. Even her brother had more spine than muscle. One day, Lisa decided to ask him why he was still in prison. He explained that same night that he received a life sentence after being caught. He admitted that when he was free, he kidnapped and tortured an uncomfortable amount of transient women. He said something along the lines of, "God has no respect for harlots." Maybe he was insane, but he claimed he was a respectful man of the Lord. In the state he stood in now, he was the pure antonym of the nice guy persona he usually shows. His eyes rested half-lidded and bloodshot. His gaze lingered on parts of her body with an unsettling desire. Although his hands gripped hard on the bars on either side of her face, he looked ready to topple over with a single misstep. He mumbled to say something, but she was only able to understand the slurring of an accused drunk. Realizing her presence made no difference to anyone in the vicinity. She sucked in as much as she could and ran off with that breath held within her chest. The letter elt as if it was coming true. I want to see the chaos from the front seat. Such a massacre has been my dream since becoming a person of power. I can do it, so why not? For 25 years, I have gotten away with enough wrongdoings to make the boy I'm killing tonight look like a saint. He's been a serial killer since childhood, but he's merciful in the sense he ends their suffering. However, Lisa rushed through the halls with her hands clasped around her keys. She glided past cell after cell with nothing standing out to her until she heard a muffled bang come from the prison's watchtower, cantered in the lunch area on the first floor. She crept up to the door and reached for the knob. A sharp pain ran through the muscles in her wrist. Her eyes closed for the moment of impact before she opened them to see her brother in nothing but his worn-out, once white, prison boxers. His eyes were wide and the same shaded red as the other inmate she had seen up close. His entire face was morphed into fear itself. Lisa had never seen him look like this. Richard fell on top of her, breathing as if he just escaped a nasty waterboarding session. Except he wasn't wet. He was covered in oil. She froze in place, a fathomable confusion filling her expression. The room grew more tense as Richard only stared for a moment and opened his mouth, inhaling and howling. He then pushed off Lisa's chest and sprinted away, never turning to look back. His destination seemed unclear. It just looked like he wanted to get as far away as possible. At first, she found the cowardice retreat understandable because it made sense. The only time a prisoner would get to enter the watchtower was if they were in trouble and about to receive some sort of punishment. My morals have morphed over the years. I'm not an old man going senile. I have come to embrace the cruelty I wish to inhabit, although I still recognize that this is wrong. I want to watch the hell burn from its core. I understand that this is an unforgivable madness. The ending of the letter resurfaced in her brain as the warden walked out from the shadows of the tower. He smiled widely, towering over her in uniform pants and his uniform boots. He lifted his hand with his gun pointed to his head. She stared in horror as her brother's howling continued like a dog whistle. Before she could catch up with herself, the gun was fired, and a bullet went straight through the warden's skull. So I write this letter to let you know that I will be taking my own life after have fun. And I take the boy's. His body fell limp, and the alarms finally took away her silence. She stared at the body, and the next 4 hours of her life passed in a blur. She was taken into emergency care and treated for substance abuse, just like everyone else in the prison. Even though she had accidentally saved her brother's life that night, it was already too many deaths, too late. The world had already been spoon-fed the confession of the wicked, the shadow of the past. In the depths of the hospital's darkest ward, I sat beside my grandfather's bed, the only sound the faint hum of the life support machines. The air was heavy with the stench of decay, and the flickering fluorescent lights above cast eerie shadows on the walls. "Kiddo," he whispered, his voice like a rusty gate creaking in the wind. "I got something to tell you." I leaned in close, my heart racing with anticipation. "What is it, Grandpa?" He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling with the effort. "I was involved in a ritual many years ago. A young woman was sacrificed, and I helped cover it up." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My grandfather, the man I'd always admired and respected, was capable of such a horrific act? "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, trying to process my emotions. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, kiddo. I'm so sorry. I've carried this guilt with me for so long, and I don't want to take it to my grave." I looked at my grandfather, seeing him in a new light. I felt a mix of emotions: shock, anger, sadness, and compassion. "Grandpa," I said, my voice soft, "I forgive you, but I need to ask you something." "What's that, kiddo?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you want me to reveal the truth, or keep your secret safe?" Grandpa's face contorted in a mixture of pain and relief. "Please, kiddo, keep my secret safe. I don't want to hurt anyone else with my mistakes." I nodded, feeling a weight settle upon my shoulders. "I'll keep your secret, Grandpa. But promise me one thing." "What's that, kiddo?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Promise me you'll find peace. Finally. You've carried this burden for so long. It's time to let it go." Grandpa's eyes filled with tears again, and he nodded, a small smile on his lips. "I promise, kiddo. I'll find peace. Finally." As I sat there, holding my grandfather's hand, I knew that I would keep his secret safe, but I also knew that I would carry the weight of that secret with me forever. The darkness closed in around us, and I could feel the presence of the unknown. lurking just beyond the edge of perception. I knew that I had to make a choice, to reveal the truth, or to keep the secret hidden. And as I looked into my grandfather's eyes, I knew that I would choose the latter. For in the world of shadows and secrets, sometimes the truth is better left unspoken. The machines surrounding us beeped and whirred, a constant reminder of my grandfather's mortality. I looked at him, seeing the pain and guilt etched on his face. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'll keep your secret safe, but promise me one thing." "What's that, kiddo?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Promise me you'll find peace. Finally. You've carried this burden for so long. It's time to let it go." Grandpa's eyes filled with tears again, and he nodded, a small smile on his lips. "I promise, kiddo. I'll find peace. Finally." As the darkness closed in around us, I knew that I would keep his secret safe. But I also knew that I would carry the weight of that secret with me forever. And as I looked into my grandfather's eyes, I saw something that chilled me to the bone, a glimmer of evil, a spark of malevolence that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. I knew then that I had made a terrible mistake. I had promised to keep my grandfather's secret safe, but I had no idea what horrors that secret might unleash. As the machines surrounding us beeped and whirred, I knew that I was trapped in a living nightmare, with no escape in sight. Here is a prequel to the story. Origins, New Orleans, 1955. Etienne Lafleur, a young and ambitious occultist, stood in the dimly lit chamber, surrounded by the members of the mysterious Order of the Red Hand. The air was thick with the scent of incense and something else, something darker. "Brothers and sisters," Etienne began, his voice dripping with conviction, "we stand at the threshold of a new era, an era of power, of knowledge, of transcendence." The members of the Order nodded in agreement, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. "But to achieve this goal," Etienne continued, "we must be willing to make sacrifices, to push the boundaries of what is acceptable, of what is human." The members of the Order murmured among themselves, their voices filled with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Etienne raised his hands, and the room fell silent. "I propose that we perform the ritual of the Red Hand," he said, his voice dripping with anticipation. "A ritual that will grant us the power to transcend the limitations of the human form." The members of the Order nodded in agreement, and Etienne began to outline the details of the ritual. As the night wore on, the members of the Order prepared for the ritual, their movements filled with a sense of urgency and anticipation. And Etienne, the young and ambitious occultist, stood at the center of it all, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. The ritual began, and the members of the order chanted and swayed, their voices and movements building to a crescendo of power and energy. And at the center of it all, Etienne stood, his eyes fixed on the young woman who was to be the sacrifice. The ritual reached its climax, and the young woman screamed as Etienne plunged the dagger into her heart. The members of the order cheered and chanted, their voices filled with a sense of triumph and power. And Etienne, the young and ambitious occultist, stood at the center of it all, his eyes gleaming with an otherworldly intensity. But as the ritual came to a close, Etienne felt a sense of unease, a sense of guilt and regret. He looked down at the young woman's lifeless body, and he knew that he had made a terrible mistake. The ritual may have granted him power, but it had also cursed him with a guilt that would haunt him for the rest of his life. And as Etienne walked away from the ritual chamber, he knew that he would never be able to escape the shadow of the past. Search, and you might find. Search, and you might find. I am an independent journalist, living in a world of news spilling out at an unprecedented rate in the history of mankind. Much of it was false, without any factual evidence. Lies and untruths seemed to be the norm. Each morning, when I opened my computer or picked up the mail, it took a good hour to sort through the garbage. Today, I had a pleasant surprise. An invitation from an old friend to spend a quiet weekend in his country manor. It was about 2 years ago since I last saw him at Penelope's wedding. We had a bet their marriage would not last 5 years. As far as I knew, she was still married. But she remained a very demanding woman. At the university, I had been a very close friend of George Webster. He was now Sir Webster, a member of Parliament. He was a pleasant chap, with a head of white hair and a round, chubby face with distinctive blue eyes. He had a corpulent body, no doubt, from hearty meals and plenty of drinking. His wife was quite the opposite, with a slender profile and reddish hair arranged like a beehive on the top of her head. She had a wicked sense of humor and was always enjoyable company. I was looking forward to a quiet weekend in the country. I arrived an hour before dinner to face a manor built 200 years ago. George inherited it from his parents. I remember the parties here when we were students at the university. His parents were great hosts, always inviting a selection of pretty young girls. I believe they wanted to make sure George meets the young people they approved of. George came leaping to the front door and hugged me with great affection. I will get the maid to show your room. No need to dress for dinner. We will only be us three. come down to the drawing room in half an hour for cocktails. While George handed me a whiskey, I warmly embarrassed his wife. Nothing had changed. The beehive on the top of her head was still in place. I am always delighted to be served at dinner with good food and stimulating conversation. His wife left us the moment an excellent cigar and cognac were forthcoming. Once George's cigar was lit, he spoke. "David, do you remember that time at the university I taught you how to catch butterflies?" "Sure I do." "Why are you still an ardent collector and improving your collection?" "If I remember correctly, you were obsessed with butterflies. Bring your cognac and come with me. I want to show you something." We went down a small passage. At the end was a locked door. George took a key from his pocket, opened the door, and switched on a series of overhead spotlights. I have never seen such a beautiful show of hundreds of butterflies with their vibrant and delicate colors. The room was about 26 square meters, with waist-high side oak cabinets surrounding all the 3 walls. The upper 3 walls were covered with 3 large frames of magnificent pinned butterflies. I could see each frame was labeled with the title of 3 continents: the Americas, Europe, and Africa. I stood there, bewildered, completely stunted by the beauty of the room. As I walked in, I noticed a large, comfortable couch in the middle of the room. It was unusual in that it had 2 sides, allowing one to change their position in order to view all sides of the room. In front of each side of the couch was a coffee table. I turned around to view the wall in which the door was positioned. The wall was covered with a wall-to-wall library. George suggested we should sit down. As you notice, I specialize in rare butterflies from 3 land masses. You will notice there is a gape of 2 butterflies in the Americas display. 1 the European and 2 on the African. Under each butterfly, I always mark the date and place it was found. According to my book collection and extensive research, these butterflies represent extremely rare spies. I like to think it is one of the world's greatest collections, representing hundreds of hours of travel and research. To be complete, I need to fill in the 5 missing specimens. George, it is totally amazing. The display of these remarkably beautiful creatures makes one feel belittled when compared with the creations of nature. What's in the drawers below? More butterflies that I thought were interesting on my travels, searching for that rare specimen, as I am known throughout the world as a collector. I have a network of people that inform me that they have seen a rare butterfly. The world has many well-informed amateurs interested in these creatures. In fact, last week, I had a call from a friend in Zimbabwe saying that a flame-bordered carex had been sighted near Victoria Falls. This is one of the extremely rare butterflies I am missing in my collection. Unfortunately, at this time, I cannot leave for Victoria Falls. David, do you want a free 2-week holiday in Zimbabwe? I don't understand.
So,
Well, you could go and spend a few days looking for this rare butterfly. I know you are very careful in netting butterflies without damaging them. The whole trip would be my expense. Supposing I did net this rare butterfly, how would I get it out of the country? No doubt these creators are protected by strict export laws. You are right, and collectors like me have to be very careful. In the case of Zimbabwe, I would ask you to deliver the specimen to a friend in the capital, Harare. He will then carefully pin it into an old collection of common butterflies that Victorian families love to collect and frame. He will then ship it out to a London antique dealer. This rare butterfly, mixed in an old frame, will go unnoticed by the customs. I can see you are well versed in extracting these treasures from various countries. I have never been to Victoria Falls. They say it is one of the world's spectacular sights. If I agree to go, would there be somebody there to meet me? Yes, my contact would meet you at Victoria's airport and take you to your hotel. He will be your guide the whole trip. I suggest you spend 2 days as a tourist, and then the next 8 days exploring the forest where the butterfly was sighted. If not found in 8 days, take the plane back home. If you, by a miracle, manage to capture it, I ask you to fly to Harare and give it to my friend there. At this point, I recommend you fly home from there. If an overnight stay is required in the capital, my friend will arrange it. These trips are always a gamble, but to add this butterfly to my collection, it is worth the cost of the gamble. We collectors are brain-damaged human beings, obsessed to complete the items we collect in a satisfying and logical manner. Of course, I will supply all the necessary equipment. You will need to consult your doctor about a trip of this nature so that he can supply you with all the necessary preventive medicines. No visa at this point is required for Zimbabwe. So are you game? Just a minute. Let me look at my diary. Yes, I think I could go next week. Is that a yes? I will need 24 hours to make a decision, as I have some commitments next week. If you do go, I suggest you go through Johannesburg and then on to Victoria Falls. Leave the return ticket open, as you might want to fly back through Harare. My man, his name is Robin, born near Victoria Falls, will be with you your whole time in Zimbabwe. It had been several years since I was last in Africa. My knowledge of the various countries on the continent was mainly in the north, so to travel to the south would be an interesting venture. As I sat enjoying a first-class meal on British Airways, it did cross my mind that maybe George had already planned my visit before I was asked down for a weekend. No doubt his thoughts were that a free trip to Victoria would not be turned down. I also realized dedicated collectors will employ any means available to achieve their ambitions. In my mind's eye, I could see him spending evenings in his butterfly room, completely transfixed by the beauty of these creators. No doubt this room is where George found a haven of peace from his responsibilities of his daily existence. These butterflies not only were creators of extreme beauty, but represented for George a lifetime of dedicated research and traveling to far-off lands to find the rare specimen. At the university, he had always been an avid butterfly collector, but I never realized the depth of his passion. I remember enjoying myself on various county outings, looking for interesting butterflies. Now, in an artful way, he has got me involved. He must have thought I might be smitten by the activity. The truth of my interest in this trip was Victoria Falls. Naturally, if by some chance I found the rare butterfly, it would give me a warm feeling of self-esteem. As the air hostess passed, I ordered a glass of champagne and toasted to my success. The African journey had begun. First to admire the falls and to search for the missing rare specimen. Johannesburg Airport was vast, obviously with no restriction on land constraints. No doubt, copied from the American and European textbook. You had to walk through large shopping malls filled with many life-size copies of wild animals made out of various woods, clay, and other materials. Sizes and prices for all comers. For a second, I had a vision that this extensive animal kingdom became alive and started to enjoy the sweet human flesh of passengers awaiting planes. Interesting thought, but a chilling turn of events. At the airport, I found Robin waiting. The first thing I noticed as we drove towards the hotel was the soft and seductive African daylight with a warm weather that seemed to envelop you in its arms. Also, through the car window, I was able to admire a series of magnificent trees unique to Africa. About 10 kilometers from Victoria Falls, we turned up a small country road to the hotel. There, I found a little patch of paradise. It corresponded to the photographs shown on the internet. Only 16 bungalows that stretched from a central lodge. I was curious to see the rooms that were described as about 150 square meters with bath and showing facilities. Lounging space with a king-sized bed area protected by a mosquito net. The first time I experienced sleeping under a mosquito net was in Barbados years ago. In those days, it just hung over the bed and needed pulling down. Of course, I was unaware of this procedure. The next morning, I had just one big mosquito bite. Funny how certain circumstances, you quickly learn to use things properly. Back to the hotel. The entrance hall and lounges were decorated to an ambiance of yesteryear. Spacious, elegant, and tasteful. The smiling staff treated me as if I had just come home after a trip up country. I had a vision of wearing riding boots, putting my feet up, and asking someone to pull them off. Before I was taken to my room, we sat down with a cup of tea. George's man, Robin, explained why I was here to take photos of butterflies for a London magazine. Before the shooting commenced, we would take 2 days to see the falls. While drinking our tea, the hotel's hostess kindly explained that to walk the length of the falls is a 2.4 miles walk with several stops to admire the view. Also to dry out from the spray and mist generated by the falls. As it was the rainy season, the falls would be near their maximum flow of 2,800 cubic meters of water per second, as opposed to 300 metric cubes in the dry season. We decided to visit on the first 2 mornings. Now to the room. As we entered, I had the feeling of being introduced to Zimbabwe under British rule. This was the state of play. Everything and everybody has their place. I walked through the room to the balcony at the far end, noticing on my way a bar full of all the drinks imaginable. I opened the glass screen windows to experience the Africa of one's dreams. It was a small valley running down to a water hole. I quickly realized the hotel was on a slight rise, protecting it from the multitude of animals slowly grazing their way to water. One could not ask for a more idyllic view. I was to spend a few hours on this balcony, just observing the animal kingdom, going about their daily lives. The room was delightful and serviced with all the facilities to make your stay a pleasing memory. I had a bizarre feeling that for the privileged, Africa must have been a very pleasant place. The next morning, heralded by a dawning sun. Breakfast on the terrace with interesting choices of food. Robin drove me to see the falls. 20 minutes drive, we were in the Victoria Falls, parking after being heralded by African folks dancing at the gate. Armed with waterproof capes, we set off towards the falls. The first encounter was the noise, the next the spry, and then through the trees we saw the watershed. It is a sight so awesome, it literally took your breath away. The beauty, the power, and the light and mist reflected from the cascade of water is frightening. I was inspired to write a poem in acknowledgement of its beauty. I knew a magazine in London that might be interested in publishing it. The Falls, Victoria, Zimbabwe. On the horizon, across those vast lands, I saw a wispy sight of mist raising for the earth. No apparent panic from the wildlife. A fire, it is not. The nearer I get, a rainbow arching is beauty skywards. Then I heard the rumbling sound like thunder. There, covered in spay, is a mystery and magic that unfolds. Gigantic, awesome water falls from majestic heights, falls in torrents of spectacular proportions, careers deep into the river below. The beauty of the falls is in its majestic power, a never-ending cascade of turbulent water. This power dominates your mind and soul. Torrents of water flow through your veins. You are left exhausted and on occasions wet from the spray. One feels very small, experiencing nature's magnificence. The original explorers never saw the falls from the air. The mighty river in its majesty is a glorious prelude before it turns into the eternal beauty of the falls. One visit is not enough for the tranquility of your spirit. The second visit, the falls were shrouded in mist and stray. Then, by the hand of God, the curtains opened, all her power and glory exposed to the naked eye. In bended knee, you threw your arms to heaven in admiration. We spent the next day at the falls. Their splendor and magic had the same force of attraction as the previous day. On our third day, Robin took me to the forest where the charakt had been sighted. There were plenty of butterflies, and I practiced catching a few. When I let them go, I enjoyed watching them fly into the magnificent trees. Robin was most amused. He told me he had spent many days with George, chasing butterflies. It was my fourth day in the forest, after spending many hours walking and watching the constant movement of these colorful creatures, that we saw the butterfly that George hungered for to complete his collection. There it was, on a branch, enjoying the evening sun. I took a deep breath, moved slowly and quietly forward. All my practicing of using the butterfly net paid off. George had provided me with a special prepare box to keep the precious creator in. That night at the hotel, we had an excellent dinner with champagne. The next morning, we left for Harare. Robin and I found with difficulty George's friend in a scheduled part of the capital. He was a taxidermist, owning a store full of the various wildlife found in Zimbabwe. Once, he saw the butterfly that George had already contacted him about. His face lit up with excitement. I never thought you would find it. Incredible. My friend George will be in seventh heaven. Later that day, I said goodbye to Rodin and gave him a handsome tip for all his kindness and help. Sitting on the long flight to London, I thought about my little adventure. 2 days as a tourist, visiting one of the world's great wonders, was like a dream. Then, a few days tramping through the forest, searching for a rare butterfly, had the thrilling flavor of the chase. Completing my mission was a very satisfying end. 3 weeks later, when picking up the morning mail, I noticed a letter from George. He told me everything was in order. There are no words to thank you. When you have a moment, come down to see us. He enclosed a handsome check for my intervention. David Nutt, December 2024.